Hello and welcome to Get Rich Slow, the podcast that challenges the conventional get rich quick ideology and instead explores what authentic success really means and how you can achieve it. I'm Hannah Martin, the founder of Talented Ladies Club, and today I'm joined by Erin Thomas Wong, the founder of Life Friendly Business. So hi, Erin.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for joining me. Now, before we get into anything else, I'd like to ask you what success means to you.
So success to me is being able to design my life, really, and being a bit more in control of that. So, it's designing a business, doing stuff that I love. It's being able to work flexibly. I'm able to pick my son up from school every day. It's also about being able to manage my stress levels and kind of decide how things play out rather than having someone else dictating that. And having the flexibility so that when I'm in a low energy period, I can go with that and not feel all this pressure to do stuff. So it's definitely success for me is about doing it on my own terms.
And having a life-friendly business, I guess. Funnily enough. Thank you. So, I mean, I've known you for years, haven't I? I sort of found you quite early on in TLC's journey. So, for those people who are listening who don't know you, what's your background?
So I used to work in TV production. I was a production manager in London. I loved working in TV. It's what I'd always wanted to do. But when I got pregnant with my first son, I thought, how on earth am I going to do this job and be the mum that I wanted to be? And I think, it was like a crossroads for me. And so I actually started my first business when he was just 6 months old. And it was a franchise of a jewellery company. So something completely different. And that threw me into a whole world of self-doubt and all those kind of things. But over the years, I then went on to get a little bit addicted and I started several other businesses, like a network for mums in business in West London, and then baby and toddler venues. And basically, I love being able to create something. And long story short, we had a massive life change when my husband got headhunted for a job in Abu Dhabi. And we moved out there. We had 2 kids by that point. And I left my 3 businesses behind and felt incredibly isolated and lonely. And that's when I thought, you know what, I love what I do. All the things, they were all related to mums. But I wanted to do something that I could do from anywhere in the world. So that's when I created my online community, which was then making mumpreneurs. Now it's Life Friendly Business. But it's all about having the support to grow a business around family life or around other commitments in your life.
Excellent. And like I said, I think, you do excellent work, and I know that your community, you give a lot of value to communities and they really appreciate you. And this episode was inspired by seeing something that you wrote on Facebook, and the term was relatable mentors. And that really spoke to me, because one of the reasons that I set up this podcast called Get Rich Slow was because there was so much of this sort of, you have like a 7-figure, 8-figure business in a year if you just do X, Y, and Z, and you can be sipping cocktails in a kind of far-flung destination, working for a beach. And actually that isn't the reality for most people. And it's not actually the goal for most people. That's, not what people are trying to earn, an 8-figure business. And actually an 8-figure business is quite a large thing and unachievable realistically for most people. So you talking about that really appealed to me. So what does a relatable mentor mean to you?
Well, I first heard the term in the Rose Review of Female Entrepreneurship, which basically cited a lack of relatable mentors as one of the top barriers to female entrepreneurship. And the other one was childcare. And for me, it really rung true because, when I started my first business 14 years ago, the business mentors were men in suits. And, I used to go to these business networking things, which were at breakfast time, which is a nightmare if you've got children. And I would meet these men who were these big, corporate type businesses. And I just felt so tiny and small and, completely like a fish out of water. so that's where it kind of started for me, this idea that where's someone who is like me, who gets me, who can help me grow my business. And then what's been really interesting is that now I am mentoring women who are building and scaling their businesses. I've had people come to me who they say, look, I've had a mentor or a coach before and it didn't work out for me because they made me feel absolutely rubbish. And I was like, what do you mean? And, you know, one of them said, this coach basically gave me this like list of this is what you need to do to grow your business, and you should be doing this every day, and you should have a morning routine, and you should do this and you should do that. And she was like, I've got 5 kids. And I never could keep up with all these things that this coach was telling me. And I just felt like I was constantly failing. And so it just really just makes me think like we need more people who like are talking about running a successful business, but not at the detriment to everything else in their life. Not everyone wants to be a hustle entrepreneur who works all the hours, because one day they're going to make it and then they'll be able to take it easy. For me, running a business is all about enjoying the journey of running a business, and making sure that we don't burn out before we get there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you. Actually, funny enough, you just reminded me, I buried this deep in my memory. When I first started out with TLC, we'd had something similar to what you're just talking about. So I'm in West Sussex, and they funded, or part funded, you paid a small amount to meet a local business mentor. Of course, they were all white middle-aged men. Nothing that's wrong with white middle-aged men, but they were just uniformly. And I met one guy, and basically TLC was at that time just a website. That was what our whole business model was. And the whole mentorship inverted commas session was him telling me I needed a website for my business and his company would build one for me. And I kept saying to him, but I have a website. I didn't listen to me. So I actually complained that wasn't, I paid for that. It wasn't any good. So they set me up with another guy who worked in e-commerce, which I thought, well, that's quite interesting because I, want to kind of sell stuff via my site. And I sat for 45 minutes of him lecturing me about selling via Amazon. And I could see my time ticking away. And I said, oh, excuse me, can I just interrupt you? Only home 15 minutes after this hour I'd paid for. And he said, young lady, I haven't finished yet. So patronising. And I got nothing. And at the end of it, he tried to sell me his book. And I just thought and I spoke with other people who had a fairly kind of similar experience, that there just wasn't, neither of them had taken any time to understand my business. You had to fill in a form beforehand. So they could have gone on my website, looked at my business, or even asked me what I wanted out of that session, and neither of them did. It was such a waste of my time. So yeah, totally, there's sort of that end of things that was really not fit for purpose. But I also, what you talked about there, the other scale end of things, where very much this didn't really exist when I started out, and probably when you started out. There's so many now online coaches and mentors, and I've interviewed people who have bought their programs and done quite their top programs, and it seems to be it's almost like this as you mentioned, a cookie cutter approach that. My friend, she was saying that you had to hire their people and do exactly what they told you to do to get success. And it's not always like that, is it? It's not one size fits all. It's about finding something that works for you in your business.
Yeah, and I think that, a lot of these grand claims that they make, especially if they're talking about how much money you can make from after doing their program, it always makes me suspicious, because I don't think that you can make those kind of statements.
So what I will say is that I don't do this generally, but I mean, I'm through MLM, I'm research and MLM. I'm quite good at research on people, and I don't do this unless someone comes out and says, I'm a multi-millionaire, I've had X number of successful businesses, pay me a lot of money and I'll teach you. Those people I'll go and look up if they're saying those things. I think if you're putting it out there, if you're making a claim out there, then fair enough, because you can go on Companies House, and if anyone does make money, they will have a limited company on Companies House. And what I will say of those people who say that they are X7 however many figures turnover, they either don't make that money, or when they do make that money, it's only by coaching. I've known people, there is one woman that has had 2 companies forcibly closed down with huge debts, who is now selling herself as a business mentor. I know someone who was struck off and actually convicted of fraud and banned from being a director, who is selling herself as a business coach. I know someone else who's bankrupt, who's selling herself as a business coach. I know other people who had failed businesses and now are wealthy, but only wealthy through selling the illusion that they understand how to create a business. And that makes me really, really cross, because I think it's not easy to start a business, and an honest business. And unless you have a degree in business from a university, and even then I would sort of say, if you've got no practical experience, I'm not sure how much you can really know about boots on the ground work. But unless you have genuinely grown a successful business, an honest business, it's nothing to do with coaching, it's a genuine business in and of itself, I'm not really sure how you can teach someone else who's starting a business that is not related to just cookie cutter approach to starting a business. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I see a similar thing of people that are starting a business as a business coach but have never run their own business. And I do get that there's a difference between coaching and mentoring, although it is very grayscale, isn't it, now? Because, you know, the definition of coaching that the Coaching Academy taught me years ago was the fact that coaching is 100% the coach asking questions to help the person find their own answers, and mentoring is 50% asking them the questions, 50% sharing your knowledge and expertise and, you know, experience, and then a consultant is 100% the consultant giving the answers to the person. Now you've got coaches that they're not just asking questions, they're giving advice, and, you know, so it's all got very confusing for people who are looking for someone to help them. But my approach has always been to be really honest about, you know, the issues that I've had, like running 5 businesses over the years, why things haven't worked out. And that's how I can help people, because I can stop them from making the same mistakes, and I can share those stories to help guide them. And I also, what really bothers me is the messages online that make you think that anyone can start up as a coach or whatever it is and earn 10k a month and blah, blah, blah. Now, in all honesty, not everyone is cut out for small businesses. Like, not everyone is going to make it. I mean, you know, the statistics are very low, aren't they, for how many small businesses actually make it. And a lot of this messaging is making people feel like it should feel easy. And then when it's not easy, they just feel like they failed. And a lot of them give up. So I think we need
absolutely and so yeah, I was saying that the people I speak to that go through some of those programs that do sell, so the sales pitch is, I can help anyone, I can help everyone, and then you come in the program and it doesn't work. It's very much, and some of these people have come from MLMs who are doing this as well. It's very, the journey on MLM to, and I agree that the coach, consultant, mentor kind of label is very blurred today. And it is a kind of classic thing to come from MLM into coaching. And when it doesn't work for people, it's often flipped around that it's your fault. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't believe in yourself enough. You know, you didn't follow what I said. So the blame is then shifted onto the person that's failed, rather than actually looking at their process. So I mentor people as well. And if I worked with somebody and that process clearly wasn't working for that person, and I wasn't enjoying it and I wasn't feeling I was helping, I would examine, well, actually, are they the right, have I taken the wrong person on, which is partly my fault because it's my responsibility to make sure that I'm working with the right people. And if not, is my coaching working or my mentoring working? You know, am I sharing the right advice for them? So I would bring it back to, you know, I have responsibility to myself to make sure that I recruit the right people and work with them in a way that is genuinely helpful, not simply to say it's to place the blame onto someone else. Because I think when you do that, you don't develop your own product or your own self, do you? It's like, it's not looking at the product with the product's any good. It's looking at the blame elsewhere. And there's no personal development with you to ensure that you give a better service in future.
Yeah, and what you're saying, that is the benefit of working one-to-one with someone, because, like you say, you're really keyed into, is this working for them? Do we need to tweak the way we're doing things? Blah, blah, blah. But if you're going into a program and spending a lot of money to do that program, you might not have that that actual personal touch. It's like, follow this cookie cutter approach. And if it doesn't work for you, oh, well, it's worked for all these other people that are shouting about their wins in the Facebook group. And then, you feel absolutely rubbish. But I think that really to have a successful business and to have a life-ending business, it's about like drawing on the strengths of that person. And, you're going to have one person who is absolutely confident about getting visible on social media and doesn't mind doing video and all those things. And then you're going to have someone else who literally can't think of anything worse. And therefore you need to change the approach. It's one thing, I totally am with the whole idea of stretching people into their stretch zone rather than their comfort zone. But, trying to tell people they need to do things that literally make them procrastinate so much that they don't take any action, that's not going to help them.
So when you work with people, how do you do that? Do you have a structured approach, or do you change it with every single person you work with?
Yeah, I change it. Like with the one-to-one mentoring, it's very much like, what's happening right now? Where do you want to get to? And let's make a plan to get there. So it's all completely bespoke. I do run a mastermind group as well, and that's really lovely to have this kind of like melting pot of lots of other people's experience and wisdom all coming into it. So it's all, and that's called Evolve. And it's called Evolve because we are on an evolving journey. And, and I think that we've got to acknowledge that there are lots of different things that can impact the success of our business at different points, including stuff that's going on in our personal life. And that's why it's so useful to have people to help keep you on track and keep you, going in the right direction with your strategy. Because, when you've got kids or you're caring for people, your focus is really split. And so having those people that understand what your goal is and where you want to get to and helping you get there is so invaluable.
And what would you say to someone who's listening, who's wondering how they can find a mentor that is right for them, that they can relate to? What sort of process should they go through to sort of weed out the right people?
Well, I think, word of mouth referrals are obviously amazing. But if you're not surrounded by people like you who are, also running their businesses, looking online, I think at content that you resonate with, so blog posts and podcasts and things like that, I think it's really useful to kind of try people out by listening to podcasts and watching videos that they've done and getting a sense of whether you resonate with them or not. I think it's very easy to fall for the big claims that people make with their coaching programs. But I think if you can speak to someone who's done that, if there's any way that you can kind of do your background research and actually read proper testimonials, not just all the hype that goes out there, because people have affiliate programs that, the big coaches, they have massive affiliate programs, don't they? So all these people are posting about them, but is it actually genuine? And that it is quite hard to see sometimes.
Yeah, it is. I know of instances where coaches use affiliates for quotes. So and the affiliate hasn't even on their program, but they'll use them as testimonials if they have. I also know that another strategy is to get people. So sometimes it's quite common to do calls, isn't it? To kind of, people kind of can ask questions and get a sense of whether they want to work with that person. And sometimes coaches will hire people to take the calls, and it's people who've done their program. So the idea is that you are doing what you are saying, talk to us on the program, but that person is financially incentivized for everyone who signs up. So you're not getting an objective point of view, because that person's talking to you and thinking, this might be worth £200-300 to them or more. They pay quite high commissions for their big programs. So you're talking to someone who could potentially make £200-300 by you saying yes. So they're not going to, they're not going to give you an honest answer, potentially, if they don't think you're right for it, because they're thinking they want that £200-300. So I think it's really important to look at testimonials, but ask yourself whether it's actually a genuine one or not. I think there's some language, I think, that is, I personally find quite problematic when people talk about the money that they've made. I think, if someone's talking about being an X-figure coach, 6, 7, 8-figure coach, I think that if that's the first thing they're talking about, first of all, is that aspirational to you? Is that where you want to be? If you don't want to be, as you say, life-friendly business, if you don't want to give up the things that you have to give up and make the investment to be that thing, is that the right person for you? Their values aligned with you? Are they telling the truth? Because many of them aren't. But then also, it's like, is that something, a world that you want to go into? Is that the kind of environment? Are you going to be with other people who are chasing that money as well? I think that kind of language is quite easy to spot, and I personally would be quite wary of that. What do you think about that kind of language? Does that bother you, or are you uncomfortable with it?
Yeah, it's interesting because the whole, and I'm very aware of, money mindset issues and all those kind of things, but seeing those big, those posts where people are celebrating these huge income stuff, it does make me cringe a little bit. And I didn't know whether I was on my own with that. And then when I started speaking to women in my community, I realised that a lot of them, it actually makes them feel terrible. And instead of inspiring and motivating them, it was becoming quite toxic to them. And it was really interesting when I put it out there as a discussion, and so, like, everyone was like jumping on, going, "Oh, I hate it." So I think there's a really fine line between that kind of talk, motivating and demotivating. And like you say, it really depends on what your measure of success is. And there's a lot of people that I've worked with who felt like they should be wanting to earn that much money, but actually when it came down to it, there were other reasons that they were doing this, like flexibility and passion and all these things. And so those messages were making them feel small. I think it was you, Hannah, actually, that I do remember, like 8 years ago, seeing even the 6-figure businesses, that so many of them who came to be 6-figure, they're not VAT registered. And obviously here in the UK, that's a massive telltale sign that they're not actually earning 6 figures as a business.
Yeah, I would say, I remember it took me quite a long time to hit 6 figures in a year with TLC. And I worked really hard to get that. And instead of feeling happy when I got there, I just then looked up and everyone's talking about 7 figures now, and rather than celebrate that. And then, I kept working hard. And then I had one year that the year I made the most money, and I worked like a dog. I remember going to stay with my parents, in July, my parents in Devon, and I was having to run webinars and do follow-up calls. And my mum said, "I'm really worried about you. You're supposed to be on holiday and you're just working and working." And I actually made a decision to step back a bit. And I thought, why do I want that money? It's more than enough. I only really need enough. Why would I ever want £1 million? What is it going to add to my life? There were times in the early days of TLC when I was working really hard and I didn't have enough. I obviously had enough to pay my bills, but I remember I'd go out to dinner with my friends and I would be like ordering the cheapest thing on the menu. And if one of my friends said, "Oh, I don't know whether to have the steak or the pasta," and I'd be like, "Oh, have the pasta," because, I'm thinking that's going to be we're going to share that bill. And it was really nice to get to a place, for me, this is when I realised I was successful, when I could go out to dinner with my friends and not worry about what the bill was going to be at the end of the night. And that was enough for me, that I didn't really want more than that. And so there's a level of work that has to go into that I think, like you, it's when you hear those numbers, it's really hard not to get sucked in and think that you aren't enough. And I think one other thing to remind yourself, when you see one of these people sipping a cocktail in an infinity pool, having flown business class to some exotic location, and they're crowing about the money they have, you think, where's that money come from? It's your money. It's the money that people have paid them. And there's something quite almost obscene about gloating about the money you have, when that money has come really, people have scrabbled around to get that money to go on those programs. And that's what it comes to. I think one final thing about this that also I think really irks me is, when do you see, you don't go into the bank and your bank manager says, "Oh, by the way, did you know I made 200 grand last year? I'm a really good bank manager." And I don't think there's anything shameful about money. It's not about someone shouldn't be a millionaire or someone shouldn't aspire to that or enjoy it. Because I think absolutely, if that's what you want, go for it. And if you achieve it, brilliant for you. But I think when money is the first thing you talk about, and money is used as a kind of envy marketing tool, or the only aspirational thing that you should be looking at. And I think it makes other people, as they feel small or feel less successful, or devalue the things they do achieve that are actually really aligned with their true success.
Yeah, and to put things into perspective, like you say about this bank manager, so the national average UK salary for a full-time person is 35k. So I find it fascinating that as small business owners, we've got this message going that we should be aiming for over six figures. Where's that come from? You know, for many, I mean, you know, for me, I've now smashed my TV salary, but I'm working 20 hours a week. For, you know, that what was the same money as a full-time job where I was working late every night. Like, to me, that is brilliant. And I know that to a lot of women that I work with, you know, they don't want to go back to their original careers with their full-time salary. They want to work less and still earn good money. And why is that classed as anything less? You know, if the average salary is 35k for a working person, but yet we're saying, well, if you're not aiming for 6 or 7 figures, what are you doing? You know, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and also you have to ask yourself how much of that money is actually profit. I worked with someone for a while, and this person had taken their business to sort of a level above TLC at that time, and I was interested to see how they had done it, because I liked this person. I believed that they run an ethical business, and I was curious about what the strategies they'd used, and it transpired they did turn over huge sums a month. Eye-watering sums, but actually they made very, very little profit. They made less profit than I did. And I worked less hard. I had, a tiny team. I still have a tiny team that run my business. My profit margin is really healthy. So I don't have to turn over, hundreds of thousands of pounds a month. And I don't need to or want to. I can turn over a far more modest amount, but I have more than enough to earn, that I earn. And I work part-time. Like you, I work around my children. I work 4 days a week in school hours easily, and I don't even have to work all those hours. I think that to me is more important. But I think, when we're looking at the claims that people are making and asking ourselves, is that something we aspire to? And actually behind the scenes, what does it take to be a 7-figure entrepreneur? What do you have to sacrifice? How much it might actually cost you? You might turn over 7 figures and make, 50 grand? That is feasible.
Well, the thing that you said about having a team as well is an interesting one, because, when I talk to people about like growing and scaling their businesses, I'm not talking about having a team of 10 people necessarily. What I'm talking about is how much money can you make still working the same hours, maybe having a freelancer here and there, like a couple of team members. Like, what a great challenge to set yourself. How much money can you make doing that? Because the people that I know that are managing teams are finding it really hard with managing the business, managing kids, managing all this, and then they've got people to manage as well. And, and this is what I think is amazing about online businesses, is that we can, as a single person with freelancers, create our own empires without having to deal with HR and all those kind of things necessarily. So it's like what people have in their heads of what success means. Does that mean having 20 people work for you? Or does it mean earning a really healthy amount and just having yourself to worry about? It's a choice.
Absolutely.
Whatever feels right for someone.
Absolutely. And I just want to say, this isn't an anti-ambition talk. It's not kind of saying that actually, you're a mum, you should kind of give up all those dreams, go for something modest. It isn't that, because it's still about working out, I think, what are the things, and one of the questions I asked at the beginning of this is, what do you count as success? Because what are your measures of success? And, for me, for TLC, money is, and obviously I would like TLC to be financially viable, to give me enough income to be something I can sell at some point. But beyond that, I don't want money for money's sake. I'm more interested in impacts and clout and changing the world for the better, having money to give to charity, which I can now do every month, to make other people's lives better. It's more about those things. And so I'm fiercely ambitious still today for my business, but that ambition doesn't lie in making 7 figures. It lies in lots of different areas. So I don't think we're not saying that you should aim small and aim to work kind of 3-4 days a week, and don't kind of aim for those big things. And you're saying now, you work 20 hours a week and you've smashed your previous TV salary. So it's still about being ambitious. It's still about having goals and reaching them, whether that's about impact that you have or even money. But it's about working out what your goals are and not being influenced by the unrelatable mentors that we have out there talking.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, definitely. So we talked about what to look for in a relatable mentor and what to look for in an unrelatable mentor. Have you got any other tips for people around choosing the right mentor, working with the right mentor, or someone who wants to be a mentor? And actually, what does it take if you want? Maybe you've got success and you want to reach down the ladder behind you and pull women up behind you. What makes a good mentor? That's something that I find so much with the women I work with, that they have this lack of confidence about their skills as an expert in their field. And I always say to them, you just need to be a few steps ahead of the person behind you to be able to help them. And, and I think that as kind of heart-led business owners, which a lot of us are, it's amazing to be able to help those people who are walking the same path that you have walked. So I think, first of all, it's about having the confidence to recognise that you could actually be helping people. In fact, one of my mentees was saying that, she's finding a lot of people are direct messaging her and asking her questions. And she, it's a bit difficult because they're not paying her to do that. They're just kind of, and I was like, well, maybe you do set up some kind of regular call that they can pay for, that, that they can get advice from you. Because I think, if you can share that wisdom and if you can be a good listener, a lot of the time it's about listening, isn't it? Which is unlike the mentors that you met all those years ago. It's about listening to what people's worries are. And a lot of the stuff does come down to mindset, I find, and a lack of, obviously, not knowing, the tools and strategies that you need. But if you can help people with that, if you can share what you've learned, it's so fulfilling to do that. So, and if you find that, your clients or customers are asking you questions all the time and they want your support and they want this, have a think about whether it's something that you could add on as a service.
Definitely. And I said that's a really good point. And I know with the people I work with, I'm best at when I've solved a problem, then going and helping other people solve that same problem. That's what I love doing. I love solving a problem, then working out how I solved it and what was useful and what was not useful in that process. And then somehow packaging that up into a course or advice to help people. And the irony is that my greatest skill is copywriting. I'm an award-winning copywriter. I've worked for the world's top advertising agencies and brands in Hong Kong and London. I've got over 26 years experience in copywriting. And the one course I've never created is a copywriting course. And the reason for that is that it's so innate to me now to write. And I'm naturally a very good writer anyway. I've got no idea what it's like to not being able to write. I've got no idea how to teach someone the baby steps and then take them there, because all I know is how to do it. I don't remember ever what it was like, because I was so young, not being able to write professionally. So I have actually just created a product where I teach people the formula I use to write sales emails. But generally, I haven't created any. Maybe I will do. I should do, because I'm a really good copywriter. But to add to what you said, I think that's a really good point. You don't have to be a world-class expert in something. In fact, being a world-class expert at it makes it harder for you. I am probably one of the best copywriters in the world. I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but if you look at my level of experience and years of experience, I'm definitely one of the most experienced copywriters. But that doesn't necessarily make me a really good teacher. There is someone out there with far less copywriting experience, be a much better teacher than I will. So I think that's a really good point. If you're listening to this and you're thinking about, you love teaching people, you don't have to have decades of experience and a qualification and to be so far from being a learner. You can just be 2 steps ahead of other people. Reach behind and show them, and you're probably the best teacher for them because you've walked in their shoes, you remember how it feels, and you know what helped you. I think it's a really good point.
And it's absolutely invaluable to have a mentor as well, because often when we're working alone, we're just so in our own bubble, and it can be incredibly lonely as well. But also we can get very stuck in doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Whereas, you know, if you have a mentor, they can look from the outside and they hold a mirror up. And, you know, it makes you have to stop and think, hang on a minute, I could be doing this differently. And that is how you grow your business, by having those regular check-ins with someone who can see the overview. Because, you know, when you're working on your own, it's incredibly hard to be all the things in your business, let alone your own business mentor.
Definitely. And I would say that when I look back, I mean, TLC really struggled in the first 2 to 3 years. I worked really hard and it made bits of money here and there. It was sporadic. It wasn't until I invested in a really good business consultant stroke coach that it really started taking off. And since then, I've worked with several different people. What I tend to do is I look for people who've got specialism in areas that I may be lacking. So I've worked with different people and I continue to invest. I invest a lot of money today in working with other people who can mentor me, but also teach me things that I don't know. And when I look back at the progress of TLC, the times when I've thought, okay, I've stopped working with this person now because I've learned from them and I've invested a lot in them, I'm now going to go and implement this. Then my business starts to drift. It's only when I start working with someone again. And I think part of it is also the investment that you make. When you are spending a lot of money with somebody, then you think, well, I don't want to waste that money. So I think that there's a couple of things there. It's having that accountability. It's learning from someone that maybe has expertise that you would come with more consultancy and mentoring there maybe than coaching. But then also it's that fact that sort of that participation, I call it, but when you've actually purchased something, you participate because you've financially invested in it. So I think it is really important to have a mentor. I think it's really important to find the right one, but then to find a way to make sure that you get the most out of that as well.
And that's all about really thinking like a business owner, which is something I know that a lot of my clients, they struggle with because they think, well, I'm just running a small business, I'm trying to do this around other stuff, and you know, they will say to me, like, I don't feel like a proper business owner. And the word entrepreneur is like terrifying to them. But when you make that step and think, I am going to invest in getting some support, it sends the universe a signal as well that, like, come on, you're taking this seriously now. And it totally changes the way that you approach your business.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And that seems like on a good note to end this and find out where people can get hold of you if they would like to learn more about you or maybe hear about working with you.
Thank you. So my website is lifefriendlybusiness.com and I'm on all the social platforms apart from TikTok just yet, at lifefriendlybiz, B-I-Z.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Erin. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I do feel very feelings and values are very aligned.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hannah.